Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another powerful mindset interview series. I'm Jeff Hiles. I have a very special guest today, Ellie Langston. Ellie's someone I know for about 3 to 4 years now. Ellie, it's been quite a bit,
Probably, yes. Yes, 3 years.
and I've had the honor of tutoring her son, Miles, who's just a fantastic kid. And she has a beautiful house with a wonderful flow of energy. I always make the joke that my daughter used to love going in there just to go to her bathroom so she can see it and be amazed by the house and a beautiful flowing energy. Ellie, welcome to the Power Mindset. Please tell everyone your story.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to be here. And I think that, for my story, I would say I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. For college with a journalism major. And I spent most of my career in magazines. So I was a beauty editor. I worked at Cosmopolitan, Self, Fitness, and really kind of reporting on different trends. And I really just got into the trend of nails, I would say the most. And then right when I had my first son, Miles, I decided I was freelancing for different magazines, and I had an idea to kind of reinvent the nail salon experience. So I really wanted to I loved my bit broader mission was to give women confidence through nails. So it was really more about giving women a space that they could go get their nails done, feel great about themselves, and maybe try a new color, a new design, and come out of it with more confidence. So I actually founded a company called Paintbox. It's a nail salon in New York City that has now evolved into more polishes and colors and color theory, and we actually do press on nails and stuff. So really it's kind of evolved into an overarching like nail concept. So that is kind of my story that in a short and sweet way, but yes.
I'm curious, Ellie, what out of all the aspects of beauty, why nails? What attracted you to nails as a symbol of beauty for women?
Yes. So I really got interested in kind of like how hands tell a story, and everyone
Hmm.
talks with their hands, and even like people are looking at them all day long. And I noticed for me personally, when I had a manicure that I felt put together, that it gave me more confidence, and I was actually a better writer, a better employee. And so I really kind of got into the power of nails. And there was a quote from an editor one time, and she said, the farther away from your face, the more likely you are to experiment. And so I was like, oh, that's cool. Like people in corporate jobs might not want to wear like a crazy lip or crazy eye makeup, but they'll do something fun on their nails. They'll do a fun color or a design. So I really got into that as a way of like using nails for self-expression and your style and kind of and then more in a broader way too, like the manicure process, you're actually physically holding hands with the manicurist. And I thought that that's really powerful too as a source of connection. And, we live in such a digital world, and it's like an in-person experience where you're connecting with your manicurist. And another one of my passions was really elevating the career of a manicurist and, treating them as artists, which they are, and giving them respect that they deserve. So, really kind of having that experience. And then nails is a way of like self-expression. It's a miniature little palette. So one of my manicurists, she was one of my creative directors, was like, she does art on big canvases, and she was like, I view the nail as like a little canvas to do my art. So it's really rewarding to see the color in New York City. A lot of the clients came in and they'd be like having the worst day ever and so stressed, and traffic and weather and snow. And then they would sit down, have an hour connecting to the manicurist, and leave with beautiful nails. And at checkout, they would be a totally different persona. They would be less stressed, confident. They would be showing off their nails, like, look at this, look at this. And I just like really got inspired by the power of that change of coming in so stressed and leaving just so much more confident and relaxed, and kind of, and that's just powerful. And if you ask every or most women have a nail story of like they remember going with their mom or their grandmother. They remember the smell of it. And so it's just kind of an experience that's very special to women. And I felt like I was like, why does getting your nails done have to feel like going to a dentist? I was like, why can't it feel more inspiring and artful and fun and less clinical? So that was really my goal, was to treat it as more of a rewarding experience versus like something to check off your to-do list.
That is fascinating. I have two questions. First, how do you do that? How do you transfer your plays? Like, what do you specifically do to go from a clinical experience to an artful, rewarding, refreshing, rejuvenating experience? How do you do that?
Yes, it's very hard, and it's something I just kind of wanted to reinvent. We were the first nail salon to only really do manicures only. So I kind of viewed getting your feet done as like more of a spa. So um I really said, and I think I did this through my editor lens. So at magazines, my goal was to take all the trends that were coming out and really distill it to like what women need to know and what's applicable to their lives. And so I wanted to make nails and nail art less intimidating. So I actually had a lookbook. So we changed it out seasonally, but I gave women kind of a starting point to like, what do you want on your nails? So the lookbook had different designs and different colors, and they could pick from there. And I found that women get very overwhelmed. Like if you ask people, I would get a lot of texts before I started Paintbox of like, I'm standing in front of a polished wall. I don't even know what to do. What color should I choose? And I would text people back and say like, oh, light blue is really in for the spring. So I was like, why do women, they get so overwhelmed? Why not break it down for them a little bit more and really turn the power back to the manicurist, and they should be the one suggesting the colors versus like the other way was like you came in with something, where ours was like we'll give you a starting point and you can make it your own, but having that starting point and not a paralysis of choice was key. So I think the lookbook, one, two, making the space, just with even the vibe of it, the music, the seating arrangement. We wanted it to feel like a restaurant. We offered champagne and coffee and stuff, and just and having it more, all those little elements, having really friendly receptionists when you walk in, and having it be like friend to friend. We had a photo booth where you can take pictures of your nails at the end. So just having it be really welcoming, inviting, and not intimidating and not snobby. And I think that, the places I've been before you even walk in the door, like, what color you want? What color do you want? Pick your color. And I didn't want it to feel like that. I wanted you to sit down, have some champagne, have a cup of tea. Let's talk about what you want for your nails and make it more of a collaborative experience versus like, here's my polish. I just want, having it more of a give and take. So the conversation around it, I think, was
That is
huge.
absolutely fascinating. Just to piggyback off of that question, I'm sure in those conversations and connections with those clients, they get into a lot more than just nails.
Oh yes. Oh my goodness. They are, it's kind of, I mean, it's almost like therapy. You hear a lot of secrets, you hear a lot of like interesting things, and you develop a relationship over time. Especially our artists. We knew everything, their birthdays, their kids' birthdays, their dog's death, like we knew it all. And I think that that is really, right, like as technology grows, there's really less and less times for human connection and in-person human connection. And I think that it's really valuable and really powerful for women. And that's what keeps people coming back. And that's what keeps, those loyal clients engaged, and as well as our artists. I mean, most of my manicurists have been there since for the past 10 years. We have very, very low turnover. They really stayed. They're still there in New York City. And it really becomes, a ritual, but like a ritual of connection more than it's so much more than just a manicure.
I want my next question for you in terms of your career. I'm very curious about this. How was your transition from working as an employee in a magazine to being an entrepreneur and owning your own business?
Yes, I was about to get into to say the same thing because it's that's the rewarding part. And then there's a part that's hard work and a part that's not so glamorous and fun. And, I think that my transition was tricky because I was, really a writer, a marketer. I knew how to do the photo shoots. I knew how to do the colors and the creativity part of it, and even the marketing and the storytelling. But what I didn't know was more of the business part and hiring and, just figuring out all the financials and the taxes and the permits and that all is hard work. And I think that is what people don't underestimate is like people it's amazing to follow your passion. But I think any job, you have to realize that there's a part of it that's just straight out hard work and not all of it's fun. And I think that going into more of the mindset of it is that I really just had the mindset of if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to figure it out. And I think that confidence, I'm like, if they can, I would just, because I was meeting with all these beauty executives over the years, and I'm like, if they can figure it out, I can figure it out. And so I think having that confidence of like, never done created a website, let me see how to do it, and really diving into it and having that attitude of like just getting in there and researching and figuring it out and talking to people and networking and listening to podcasts and blogs and just doing your own research and having the mindset and the attitude of like I believe that I can figure this out. And if I can't figure it out, I'm going to ask someone else and I'm going to keep searching until it gets done. And I think that really was a big part of my transition of having that attitude. And I think that it made it kind of and it's crazy. It's when you have that attitude, how much comes back to you. Like it's people came into my life that like helped me, led me to this person, led me to that person that I'm still working with today and introducing them and stuff. So it's really crazy how you kind of once you get in that mindset, like with all the magic that kind of happens behind it.
Super interesting. I want to touch back on something that you mentioned about your journalism. How do you think that experience helped you with the idea of creating kind of like this empowering experience for women through nails?
Yes, I think that well, I mean, for nails specifically, I was an editor at a time where nail art really started to become a thing, and I loved it. And I remember the moment I turned to Brad, my husband, and I was like, I wish I could get the nails that I've been writing about for so long on my hands. And he was like, "What? What do you mean? Tell me about that." I'm like, "Well, my options right now are to if I want a nice manicure, I guess I could go to a spa and like, have that experience. But if I want nail art, I kind of have to go to a place where I have to bring my idea. They have a phone book worth like the choices are unlimited. They could literally draw like my dog's face on their nails. And so it was just so overwhelming those places. And I was like, I wish there was an in between, some place that was like elevated. I was like, I don't need crazy nail. I just want a little bit of nail art to give me a form of confidence and self-expression. And I want it in a cool, fun environment. And he was like, you should think about that. Like, why doesn't that exist? And I'm like, okay, yes. And then, that kind of triggered the idea. And then I went forward and ask my sister who's a lawyer, would you ever get nail art? No way. And then I would show her a picture of something like my nails are just like a slight glitter right now. And she's like, oh yeah, I would do that. I could wear that to work. I love that. And so seeing people shift into this like kind of a mindset of like, okay, maybe I should try it, or maybe I'll venture into it, or maybe I'll try a new color. Um, that that attitude of experimentation really inspired me. And that's really what I did as an editor too, was kind of getting people out of their comfort zone, baby steps at a time. Like maybe you can try this, or maybe there's a new product to use. And I think too, just curiosity about it all as a journalist, like I ask a million questions. I talk to dermatologists. I talk to people who made perfumes and fragrances. And I went to big P&G labs and looked at Pantene hair labs of like how they create products and how, the scalp up close. So I had a really an attitude of curiosity, and I think that goes a long way, and just being curious on how things work. And so I'd been doing that for almost a decade before I started Paintbox. So I just, saw this need, and kind of there was an increase also in experiential beauty of having real life IRL experiences. And so kind of putting all that together to really come up with the idea was helpful.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating to see how the different elements of your experience kind of came together to create Paintbox. It's like
Yes.
it's like a puzzle that all
It
kind of
is the
fit together.
puzzle, yes. And yes, the puzzle was so fun and so cool to see it all come together. And then there's parts of it that were new parts to my puzzle, like how do you staff in the hours where your demand is the highest? And so I think that another advice I would give is like if you don't know, there's a way to find out those answers. So I would meet with other hair salon owners to figure this out and stuff. So I think that, yeah, there's a puzzle, and then there was a new part of my brain, and even hiring people, training. Like when I was an editor, I had a associate beauty editor and assistant. So I had two people working with me. And then at Paintbox, I was suddenly managing like 50 plus, um,
Mm.
which was very tricky. And I think one of the key things that too, as we grew, and I think we did like 70 events our first year. Rihanna came into our studio. We were written about in all these magazines and stuff. So it really took off in a great way. And I think that, one of the other key things that I did is I think 3 years into it I realized that I needed to hire a CEO to really help me with the business part and to grow and scale it. And that was super smart because you're always supposed to hire someone that a different skill set is than you did. So I was doing it for that long, and I realized I needed extra support so I could, as we grew, so I could focus a little bit more on my wheelhouse, which was really the marketing, the creative, and kind of the nail concepts and everything. So anyway,
No,
yes.
no, that makes perfect sense. So you've mentioned mindset number of times. You mentioned it when you're talking about how nails shift your mindsets of your customers. You mentioned about your
Yes.
mindset as a journalist and being curious and investigating. You mentioned
Yes.
mindset in terms of being persistent and confident and having that will to, and that confident you'll figure out as you transition from an
Yes.
employee to entrepreneurship.
Yes.
If you had to define it, what is mindset to you?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I mean, I think it's like, oh, I think it's a can-do attitude, and I think it's like not being afraid of failure. You're gonna make a million mistakes along the way, and that's how you learn. If you're not, then you're not trying hard enough. So for me, it was a balance of but also listening to your gut, because I think that it's hard sometimes when you're not going to be everything to everybody. And I think you get a lot of opinions on like, we should do this. Why don't we do this? And why don't we have one in Dallas? And why don't you open, and you really, it's a balance of taking in all that advice and feedback, but then also listening to your gut and staying really focused on what you see as your brand and the future of your brand. So I think that that's kind of the trickiest part. So I would say, mindset is really confidence and in listening to feedback, but also staying true to yourself and your gut. And that's the trickiest balance. I mean, it's so hard to get right. I would say.
You have a beautiful family,
Thank
a
you.
beautiful family. I always enjoy coming to your house being part of it for a couple of years, the way you talk with each other, how you treat each other, um, always welcome each other with a smile on your face, always has good energy. And I always felt that way too. I always felt welcome in your house. I always felt cared for. And what as a mother who's
Yes.
raising two boys in this world, you
Yes.
have concerns. Let's expand it out of your experience in terms of the broader concept of mindset
Yep.
with having boys develop a healthy mindset in this current environment.
Yes. I have lots of concerns. Yeah, so I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, very different temperaments, very different concerns and everything. But I think that, I wrote down a couple concerns, but I mean, one is the digital landscape. I read The Anxious Generation this summer, and really, we've decided as a family to sign the Wait Until Eighth pledge. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's basically wait until eighth grade to introduce a smartphone. And I think it's 10th grade for social media. So for our family, that's what we decided. And I think it's mainly, my concern is really the opportunity cost with it all. It's not that technology is the devil. I think we're on Zoom right now, and that's super beneficial. Like there's so many good things about technology, but it's also the opportunity cost of not talking in person, not advocating for yourself, not having free time to be creative and explore outdoors and just have those interactions and, going into Starbucks by yourself and ordering and what does that look like? Or interacting with kids on a sleepover and not all being on your phone the whole time. So I think that that is a concern. And I feel from a very privileged position that I don't have Miles, my oldest, is not begging to have a phone. So I know that for some people with girls, especially, I have a child that's pretty on board with that. So I know that that's kind of a different position, but I would say that. And then I think that there's this pressure. I was thinking about this the other day that there's this pressure right now. Everything's like, kind of like rushing through childhood, like hurry up, like they should be in advanced and then they should be in double advanced and whatever. And I think that what is all this hurry for? Like what do you if you get to college, like I feel like there's my concern is there's maybe not space in the world for more late bloomers and the maturity comes at different times, different, genders have different maturity arcs and I think that we're in the culture of very much what are we rushing for, especially in terms of like education and middle school and, all that. So I think that those are kind of like concerns that are on my mind right now, really like the opportunity cost of screen time and then this like kind of timelines of maturity. But I think that, I mean, as a parental advice, I really encourage like always searching out like my kids like what are their skills, what are they really passionate about, what are they curious about, and really kind of fostering that. And it looks totally different for my two children. Like Miles is really interested in history and came to me one day and said like, is there anything else I can do with history, like is there a competition or whatever? And so I researched it, and actually this summer he has qualified for the International History Olympiad
Wow.
in France. And so I'm
That's
taking
so
him to that.
exciting.
I know. So he just naturally started gravitating to read. He reads pretty exclusively nonfiction. We're trying to get him to branch into a little bit of fiction, but one time I started, we had a game that was a history game that I got for him to send to the house, and I started asking him the questions, and they weren't kid questions, and they were adult questions, and he answered all of them correctly, or most of them correctly. And I, so much so that I opened I was like, have you opened this and looked through this already? He was like, no, I haven't. So I didn't realize how much he was learning, retaining. And what I'm most proud about him is that he's not just regurgitating facts. He can tell you how one war led to the next war. He's really thinking about it in a very conceptual way, a very interesting way, not just like memorization. So that, and then I have Smith, who's my youngest, who's super active and fun and energetic, and really trying to foster that in him. He's also very interested in science, but so he's been doing BMX and biking and running, and he won the fun run, the mile at Cassis the past 2 years, and so he's just, he definitely has like that, taking that energy, and how can you channel that, and that when he gets into something, he has a very focused on what he loves, which is challenging in other ways, of stuff he doesn't love that he still has to do, but he's not focused on chores. But he will practice on his bike hours every day, or he loves golf too. So just trying to channel that and help them find that, and like finding your lane. And I think there's pressure on finding that early. So I just want to give them time to develop. I found it personally very early, which was helpful. In fourth grade, I won the magazine drive, and I came to my mom and I was like, I want to be an editor. And so I was single track. Interned in college. I went to Northwestern to do a journalism program. I was on the magazine at college, like the magazine editor. I was yearbook editor, blah, blah, blah. Like, so I found it early, but a lot of people have different paths. Brad, my husband, he was pre-med for a little bit. He went to film school and then ended up more in the business kind of realm. But it's different. Everyone's on different timelines, and it takes a while. It takes a lot of self reflection, and really just figuring out. And some things that are like, maybe it was a phase, or maybe it is my life's purpose. So to find that difference is tricky. So I'm helping. That's my goal with my boys, is to really, help do what I can and ask them the questions to guide them to a path that they'll be, feel like they have a purpose and feel fulfilled in life.
It's so interesting. There's a couple of things you mentioned, which I find very important. You talked about
Hmm.
the balance of intuition and
Yes.
information, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
And when I'm working with young people, I often ask them, "What are you about?"
Yeah.
Which if I cut you open, what's
Yeah.
inside? What's the core of who you are? A lot of people have no idea.
Hmm.
They're almost at answering as if they're trying to tell me what I want to hear. I'm like, no, like
Yes.
this is not about me. All right. I know who I am. Do you know who you are? And
Yes.
with the amount of information flying at these kids, I'm concerned that do they have just a mental space to actually figure out who they are and what they want?
Yes, yes. Because it's like one activity to the other. And like, yeah, you kind of don't get the perspective sometimes to take a step back and be like, what is this all for? What am I doing here? Like, what is this? What do I really, why do I love the things that I do? And I think that, yeah, it's giving kids the space to do that. And I think like, it's less is more with it. And actually, I was looking at our summer kind of schedule, and especially for Miles, I just paired it, my oldest, like I just paired it back a little bit. I'm like, he's a kid that needs introspection and time and space. And different kids need different things. My youngest needs more structure, and he needs go, go, go action to thrive. And my oldest is like me, needs a little bit of, downtime, reading time, relaxing time to be his best self, to get energized in that way. So really knowing yourself and what you need. And one of the most proud parenting moments I've had with Miles specifically, he was like, you know what? When I kind of start getting in a bad mood, he was like, I know what I need to do. He was like, I need to take a moment to read, and I need to drink some water, and potentially like have go on a walk or something, he said. And he was like, those, and I was like, the fact that you are aware of that, and that's what you need to be your best self. I was like, that is amazing. Achievements and whatever, that's gonna take you so much farther in life than like an A plus on a test is like knowing what you need to be your best self and like how to get there. And just the awareness of naming and awareness of your feelings is super important, of labeling them, and not trying to like rush in and fix those feelings and sit with them. And I mean, that's the hardest part about parenting. It's like you want to be giving advice when a lot of times the best thing to do is just listen and help them figure it out for themselves. And what do you think you should do versus like, now you need to go tell this person this thing. It's like,
Right.
and it to shut your mouth is for me is hard. I just kind of want to see it. But yeah, it's I mean, parenting and finding this instilling this mindset is really hard. And it's sometimes you have to watch them make mistakes and fail, and that's all part of the process. So yes, I think yeah, it's hard.
Um, you mentioned a lot of gold nuggets, right? You talked about intuition, you talked about knowing yourself, um, self-awareness. My question to you is, if you had to leave a piece of advice for any young person, be young in age, young in their career, young in a marriage, and they're approaching this complex world, what would your advice be to them?
I think my number one advice would be don't underestimate kindness. I think that kindness has gotten me to where I am, frankly. I think that being compassionate towards other people, writing the thank you note to someone that you meet along the way, like writing a note to a teacher that you love. I really think being perceptive about that is really key in life. It makes other people feel really great. And I think that, when you're going out into the real world, a lot, I personally was never asked my GPA, never really asked. It was all about my networking and my work experience. So every impression you make along the way is just so key. And it was really friend to friend. Every job I got was friend to friend. And it was because I, made a good impression. I was kind. I followed up. I noticed things about them that pointed out, I feel like my advice to someone in an interview is like, if you're going to interview and you leave the person that is interviewing you, if you leave them the impression that you care about them and they feel good about themselves, then they will feel good about you. So I always ask a lot of questions of like, how did you get to where you are? And if they are talking about themselves and feel great about themselves, then they'll feel great about you too. So it's really just being interested in other people, being kind. And then honestly, like doing your research, working hard. It's being a problem solver. Like the most successful people that I've worked with are ones that, instead of being like, I don't know how this works, it's like, here, come with a solution. When you're going to your manager, your boss, like it might not be the right one, but at least have an idea of a solution. Like, I'm having this problem. Here's what I think is the solution. What do you think about that solution? Is there a better one? But coming with it with a potential answer is key instead of just raise your hand saying I have a problem. It's like I have a problem. Here's how I'm thinking about fixing it. Is that what advice do you have for that? So I think that just being a really solutions-based person that's kind and treats others with respect, like goes a long way. And I think just being really interested in other people. And being the person, I mean, this is the same with friendships, being the person that notices, or they may mention that they have a test this day and then text them that day or ask them how did the test go, showing that you really care and remember. And that's always impressed me when people have done that to me over the years. I've been like, whoa, I remember when I interviewed actually at Vogue for assistant position, and I remember the person that interviewed me. She was the night she I will always love her. She was so impressive. She wrote me a thank you note after the interview because I didn't get the job. She gave it to someone else, but she said she was so impressed with me. But she hand wrote a note to me saying that, and I will like things like that just like will stick with you for life. She didn't need to do that. There was no reason. I didn't get the job. She could have just been like, you didn't get the job, bye. But she really took the extra step. And I think it's taking the extra step, a step back and in this hurried, crazy, rushed life to be like, okay, am I being the best friend? Am I being the best employee? Am I, being the best student? How can I, tell my teacher thank you for this? Or I noticed that I mean, Miles goes to chapel. He said one of his teachers said something that was interesting. I'm like, oh, you should write him a note, saying that you really liked that chapel. And I think those things set you apart. They really do in the long run.
And she's a lady of her because I have right here. I'm staring at it
Oh, yes, our Christmas
for
card.
another year
Oh, yay. Oh, that's amazing. You kept them. And I love all your art behind you too. That's awesome.
and another one. So for every year. So I have them right. I see them. I see you every day. Put
Yes,
them up right on my board on my room,
that's so nice.
and
Yes,
that
it
there
really.
is my favorite artist, Dee Dee. Right?
Yes, yes.
That's all her work.
She
Yeah,
has crazy that art is beautiful.
yeah.
She's super talented.
She's very
Yeah,
inspiring
so
to me.
it's really just like those touch points because I think as we get faster and more technology, it's still just, going back to Paintbox, it's like that human element is like very key and yeah, like pick up the phone, call a person. And I think that for younger people, I think having the confidence to do that. Yeah, I mean, for example, I was thinking about it. It's like Miles was somehow looking at the directory of his school yesterday, and he was like, "Oh, a guy that graduated 5 years ago is now the football analyst for the New York Giants." And I was like, I mean, that would be like my son's dream job. And I was like, "You should reach out to him. Why not?" And nothing, and having that attitude of like, it doesn't hurt. Like, why not? He can.
Why not?
What's the worst that could happen? He can never email you back. And he's sixth grade. So, but I was like, maybe this summer when we're up in New York, like he can take us on a quick tour. We can take him for coffee. And I think that people are really willing to help. And if they aren't willing, that's totally fine. What's the worst that happen? He doesn't email
Right.
back or he doesn't want to do it. But it's like most people are wanting to pay it forward. And, I'm always happy to help anybody who reaches out. And it's just amazing what can happen, what life brings back to you when you put yourself out there. And I think that it's super scary and hard. And I think you have to start small and like writing the person at Starbucks and thank you note or something. You start small, and then build from there. And then you get momentum, when like great things start happening. And then also you get to exercise the muscle of say he never writes back, you get to exercise the muscle of rejection, which is awesome because that will, sting less over the years if you keep getting rejected. So it's just putting yourself out there. And I think that's really hard for everyone, but particularly I feel like, young people, um, to gain that confidence and that security in yourself to put yourself out there is pretty challenging, but worth it in something that you can exercise in small ways.
Well, Ellie, this has just been a fantastic conversation. I enjoyed it very much. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Yes.
much. The second half of 2025, we're going to be having a discussion on habits. So to this first half of the year is on mindset. So I'd love
Okay.
to invite you back if you're willing to come back
Yes.
and chat about habits
Yes. I love habits. I read that Atomic Habits book. Have you read that?
by James Clear.
Yes, it's amazing. And I love how that book is great. It really about the habits becoming part of your identity. And I think about that all the time. Like instead of thinking that I'm a person like believing like I'm an athlete and I need to do, I walk instead of saying I need to, like kind of taking it on as an identity is to motivate you to do your habits. I loved that part of that book. Or even just simple things of stacking them or like saving your favorite TV show for the treadmill or your favorite podcast. And like, there's really ways to like hack your brain to make that happen. And I loved that book. It's great. You should
Uh,
write one for kids, a kids version.
that's very true. Well, Ellie,
Yeah.
thank you so much for this, and we'll welcome you
Thank
back
you.
anytime.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for having me. It was fun.